All right, welcome back to All Day Live on this Wednesday. Pleased to be joined here in our new studio space by the St. Paul Police Chief Axel Henry. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I know, you're a busy guy, as police chiefs are, so we appreciate you making some time to come in and chat about any number of things. And we've got some topics and whatever's on your mind as well, I guess. It's, an open forum. A couple of things that are topical right now, and I know, just right off the bat, and I know you don't like to comment on other agencies and other, but your close, I guess, counterpart there in Ramsey County with the Ramsey County Sheriff has made some comments that have attracted attention in recent days related to his view of gang activity and Somali gang activity. And, there's always that discussion of what's a gang and what's a group. What's your view on on your experience with dealing with groups versus organized gangs? It's changed a lot in the last 10 to 20 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, and it's different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Minneapolis has a different gang kind of structure that we see a lot of, differently than we see here in St. Paul. Mm-hmm. The violence that goes along with that, of course, is the big concern. So we're always trying to figure out how best to target that violence and to reach out to those individuals and, really prevent the crimes from happening in the first place. And right now we're seeing a migration of groups and gangs that are going around to different areas. Many of them aren't even from the communities that the violence is taking place in. And I think that's some of what Sheriff Fletcher was referring to.
Kind of mobile. I mean, it's not based in one city. It's just kind of moving around.
Yeah, and what's happening is, and we're seeing this all over the country, is that you have collection points of a lot of people. So you see a big gathering. Oakdale just had to deal with this a little bit where they had a fireworks show the week before the 4th of July, and some fights and things broke out there. And when you get a whole bunch of people together, that's when we seem to see these kinds of things. And so law enforcement has to just be really in tune and plugged in to make sure that we're identifying that early.
Yeah, and something that he's remarked about, and I've had conversations with other law enforcement about over the years, is that there's a big social media element here, that it may not be particularly with certain criminal activity as the goal, but it's more like rivalries. It's more, you insult somebody on social media and then maybe use social media to find out where somebody's going to be, and that escalates things. Is that what you're experiencing?
Yeah, we see a lot of that. It seems like a lot of it stems from really kind of small, what we would argue are pretty small slights or things that wouldn't be there. When I was growing up, I'm older, so the gang kind of thing that people thought about when you mentioned gangs was things like colors and, the red and blue rags and things that are kind of, at this point, a little bit antiquated, to be honest with you. But they used to say when I was growing up in the neighborhood that I was in that if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And the gangs and the groups that we're seeing now aren't really fighting over like the traditional kind of Hollywood things like territory and drug real estate.
Turf and
it's over,
pride and ego and insults.
Yep.
And that's more of what you see. Want to turn to another topic here that is coming up. The Minneapolis City Council today, a public hearing on the use of drones for law enforcement as first responders. I know there's a number of people there that are planning to go to this public hearing in Minneapolis who oppose it for fearing that they could be used for surveillance purposes. Now, St. Paul Police has had a drone program, a docked drone program, since 2023. And a number of other jurisdictions also looking at adding them or have added to them. How much have these other departments come to you to ask about your experience, and what would you say your experience is in using drones for law enforcement response in the last 3 years?
Yeah, we've had them reach out to us and ask us how our program works. And so just to be clear, initially our first drone deployments were actually, you kind of call them trunk drone deployments, meaning that the officers get trained as pilots, they get trained how to do it, and they also have a spotter. And then that drone is in a trunk. And if a case comes up, maybe you have a person that falls into the river, or we have a perimeter set up and you have an armed suspect that's going between the yards, they could pull the drone out of the trunk and then activate it from that point. Now, obviously, that officer is driving a squad car. And
so they're also responding. So then the drone response is delayed by the officer's response time to get to that.
Yep. So now we have 3 of them that are kind of fixed, and we also in our RTIC we have people that are sitting kind of in a space like we're at now at a computer, and they're running information when a call comes out. What's our experience with that address or the individual, that kind of a thing. But if something comes up, and they're monitoring the fixed cameras in town, if something comes up, they can deploy that drone right there. So they're not bound to the squad car. They're not forced to pull over, do those kinds of things. And what we've seen is that we've had way more flights. And I had said to the Deputy Chief Hallstrom, who was spearheading this for us, could you collect some examples so I can, if I get asked about this out and about. And he brought me in 2 days a list of win stories that I thought, well, wait a minute, I thought this was only going on for 2 days. And he says, this is 2 days worth. And wow. I mean, from missing kids to drowning, people to violent suspects hiding on roofs and things like that. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, technology is out there. We have to turn into it. We know it's going to be there. And it's a great efficiency creator, and it's a force multiplier for us. And to be honest with you, it allows us to potentially hire people that want to work in public safety that maybe couldn't physically be a police officer or don't want to carry a gun and be in a squad car.
Can serve this role, yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, I looked at the stats from your department on this, and what's interesting is that they can respond 2 miles away in less than 3 minutes, can arrive between 4 and 7 minutes faster than officers responding in a squad car.
Yeah, quite often, depending on where the officer's at. Of course, I mean, sometimes a call comes out and you're literally at the end of the block. But most of the times, that's not the luxury that we have.
But so they can get there quickly, and what kind of information then does that give you as the officers en route? What is that able to do to kind of give you the sense of the scene that you're responding to?
Well, so sometimes they're getting there and they're seeing the vehicle fleet. Sometimes they're getting there and they're realizing whatever this was, it's gone, and there really isn't a need for a police response. We're likely still going to show up just to make sure, but they can get there very quickly, and they're giving us kind of eyes on the problem very, very fast. And that, of course, is useful because when we're going into environments, particularly ones where maybe there's violence that has occurred, the more information that we have allows us to respond better and also safer for both the people involved and the officers responding.
The concerns that have been raised, and we're going to hear this again in the Minneapolis City Council public hearing from opponents of this, is concerns about surveillance. I know your department's made very clear that these drones do not have facial recognition technology, and they're not used for surveillance purposes, and that the video and the flight logs are all publicly available and auditable. I mean, what would you tell people who've raised these concerns and will continue to about the surveillance worries here?
Well, there's a lot of things I could say about that, but probably the most potent and powerful is typically what happens when technology comes forward. It takes the law a little while to catch up to it. So something becomes possible, and then we have to legislate it to say we shouldn't be doing this or that with that. If you look into the laws, they are already very robust about when and where we can deploy without a warrant, in situations we can be in, and the laws governing what happens with that data. And so we follow those laws. We believe in them very, very strictly. And then, of course, our policies are even stricter. And so we have a long-standing issue with facial recognition and things like that. So I would just say, get informed, get accurate information out there, because the state has done actually a pretty good job of making sure that those drone programs are run in a way that's respectful to communities' rights. And we don't even like the word surveillance because we're not surveilling people with it. It's a technological advance, and that's what we're using.
Okay, I got a few other topics I want to bring up. I think we got Amber, do we need to get a break in here before we get too far behind on schedule? We got time for one more question before we go to a break. And that is another program that St. Paul Police has seen has been a very successful program, the Non-Fatal Shooting Investigative Unit, which is something that Minneapolis recently employed in March, seeing the results that you've had. I know the Ramsey County Attorney was among those going to the state legislature to really say we need grants so that departments across the state can do the same sort of thing. You've talked a lot about how this has been a real game changer for investigators in your city.
It has, and so what we've done is, in essence, really, if you want to put the most simple explanation is that we treat those like failed homicides, and we investigate them just like we would a murder. I'm very proud of our department. Our department, averages anywhere between 92 and 100% homicide solvability rate. We've gone 100% in the last 30 months. Now, obviously, we'd like those to be zero when it comes to murders, but if you commit a murder in our city, we're going to find you, we're going to hold you accountable. When I became the chief at the end of 2022, at the end of that year, we had 193 people in our city hit with non-fatal gunshot wounds. So that, to us, that's a failed murder.
It's a lot.
Last year, that number was 73. So you're talking about 120 never happens. And those are the real wins. I mean, solving the crimes is very important to deter the future crimes, but preventing any of those crimes, that's 120 people that weren't shot
And that's a result of, since you have investigators focused, before when shootings that were fatal and non-fatal were all into one investigative group, it was hard to get down the list there. And now that you can focus on those, that gets perpetrators off the street, that gets firearms off the street, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the other thing that it does is, if I'm involved in violence and you're my little brother, we're also coming in, and the city has programs, of the police department does too, where we're saying, listen, you don't want to follow in your brother's footsteps. We want to find a path for you. If we know a teacher or a coach or a parent that really resonates with you, so we can get you off of that path and get you onto a better track. And those are the real long-term solutions that are going to help us.
And so what would you tell other departments who are looking at whether they can implement something like this?
I would say come, we'll gladly have a conversation. We've talked to a lot of other departments. We weren't the first ones to do this. We went out to Denver and talked to them. We talked to a number of other agencies. We didn't model anything exactly on any other place. We kind of have, I would say we're more of a Denver-inspired program. So we're our own unique piece. But come and have the conversation and talk to a number of people, because it works.
Okay. We are going to take a quick break right now. More of a conversation with Chief Axel Henry when we come back here in All Day Live. So we're keeping an eye on that. And we'll get to that when we can here, when he takes the podium and when we can get to it. But we want to continue our discussion with St. Paul Police Chief Axel Henry, who's been so kind to come in here today, make the trip from St. Paul out to Eden Prairie. Appreciate you coming over here. Really interesting things, a lot of stuff to talk about. So we've covered drones, we've covered non-fatal shooting unit. Let's see, another thing I wanted to talk about this week was the last couple of days we've seen is the 10-year anniversary of the shooting of Philando Castile. Now, that was not in your city. That was in Falcon Heights. But that was one of the events that raised the discussion about how traffic stops are handled. In that decade, what changes have we seen in your department, and how those, how you sort of approach them, whether it's procedure, mindset, et cetera, the interaction?
Yeah, so it was a few years after this, but this kind of started in the county, and Ramsey County Attorney John Choi started talking about this, and our department volunteered to do it. This wasn't a mandate put up on anybody, but we started to focus on moving violations, not equipment violations. And on the simplest of terms, that's important because, if you're living check to check and you have a broken taillight and you're maybe waiting until next Friday to get it fixed, and then you get pulled over by me and I write you a ticket for that, well, now you have to make a choice. Do I pay for the ticket, or do I pay for maybe I don't have money to pay for both? And those things can be a cycle of different things. And equipment's different than choices you make about how you drive. And so we, with involvement with our community, decided we were going to focus on those types of things. And to me, that's probably the biggest takeaway from this, isn't the fact that maybe a 1-month-old tab is not a big deal, or a cracked windshield isn't a big deal. It's the fact that a community can come together and say, let's try this and let's do it. And what the detractors would say is that, well, those are great tools to find other things like drug violations, weapon violations, other things. And that isn't wrong in the sense that traffic interdiction helps us do that, but we have not seen that reduced in any way. In fact, our gun recovery numbers have gone up, but our interaction with our communities actually got better. And that's
what I was going to ask about, is that a lot of this is about that community interaction and about trust of the police force that's there to protect and to serve and to investigate crimes. So have you've seen a noticeable change in any sense in that community relationship?
Yeah, I think the big piece there is, and I always go back to this, people sometimes forget that the original press conference, I wasn't the chief at the time, but someone named Tyrone Terrell, who was a part of the African American Leadership Council, he was actually the head of it, said something I thought was the most important thing in that entire press conference, which was, listen, it's my community that's being impacted by these stops, probably at the highest levels. Why can't we just at least try it? And I actually think that was the right approach. And we tried it, and we tried it for a year, and we didn't see any of the negative things that people thought were going to happen. The positive things that we want to get out of traffic interdiction, we were still getting. And I think that's the big takeaway for me, is that communities can have these conversations. We can take some chances as long as it doesn't put people at risk, and try different things. And because the police department is not outside of the community, we're part of the community. And so we all have different roles and responsibilities, but we have to work together to solve these problems. And if we can make things better with small changes like this, they can have profound outcomes.
Okay. Any other topics you want to talk about here in terms of things that you're doing, new programs, new initiatives, or recruitment efforts? I know there's always been a strong recruitment and academy in St. Paul. Anything that we want to get to before I want to ask you about your artwork?
Well, I'm never gonna turn down an opportunity to recruit for our department. We'd love to have you come. We're always looking for good people. If you want a job that has real purpose and meaning, this is the job. If you think it's the job because of what you see on television, it's not Hollywood movie job.
Yeah.
But it is very rewarding and very satisfactory. I also would say that please come into town. We have a bunch of great concerts coming up. Our city is safer when there are more people in it. And so we're very excited about where the city's trying to head right now about rebuilding downtown St. Paul.
That's another issue, yeah, with downtown.
And I would tell folks that you have a chance to buy Apple stock at $1 right now.
Yeah.
So get back into downtown St. Paul. Let's get those businesses open. Let's start to go to those places, and we'd love to see it. It's a safe city.
A couple of big events this weekend, Harriet Island, and the following weekend, I believe, or is it a week later? I can't remember. But the Country Club Music Festival at Harriet Island this weekend, and then there's the Yacht Club Music Festival coming up. Attracts a lot of people down there.
Oh yeah, very safe, and we've knock on wood, we haven't had a ton of problems down there, but we're actually a safer city when the city's full of folks.
Yeah. All right. And before I let you go, I've always wondered, your arms are the way that your uniform. Any stories behind it? I think this might be interesting to people to kind of take the layers off the chief here a little bit. Any good backstories about the choices of tattoos here?
Well, I will say
I want to get my first. I've never had a tattoo, and I've always, because a lot of it is I'm debating, what do I want to get?
Well, people will warn you that they're addicting. I don't know if that's true or not, but I obviously have a few of them. I think probably the most interesting thing about the tattoos is that, that culturally 100 years ago or 75 years ago, that was kind of, these were sailors and, and motorcycle, whatever, people now. And now it's a connection point with community members. They walk up and they see the tattoos before they see the uniform, and they come over and they want to have a conversation about it. And I think it reminds them that there's a person inside this uniform, and that isn't there. So I will share one little thing. In this arm, most of my stuff is traditional Japanese black and gray work, and it's done in that style. And so this is Kentaro as an adult, that's Kentaro as a child, and I'll let your viewers can look up who Kentaro is and what that means, but they might read about that on Japanese folklore history and understand probably why I have that on there.
So there's a personal meaning to you for that?
Correct.
Is there a personal meaning to every thing that you've gotten over the years?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Huh. And how many years have you been working on this?
I think I got my first tattoo at 19 or 20, and when I was in college, so it's been a long time.
Yeah. As I keep discussing with people, I've got friends that have, tattoos like this too, and they're like, well, you got to make sure you pick something that's meaningful. And I'm like, okay, what is that going to be? So then I get stalled out and not getting one, but that's great.
Yeah, there can be a little anxiety around it because they are permanent, although nowadays removal, I suppose, is possible.
I suppose
but I don't plan on doing it.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Good to see you. Appreciate
you too. Thank you for having us.
Appreciate you taking the trip in here.